happen. Joining us now, Chris Kirchhoff. He was the Director of Strategic Planning for the National Security Council under Barack Obama. He is co-author of Unit X, How the Pentagon and Silicon Valley Are Transforming the Future of War. Chris, good to have you on.
Thank you.
First, I want to start on the impact of drones and just how we've seen drone warfare advance in Ukraine. You mentioned quite a notable example of this, that of the 31 U.S. M1A1 Abrams tanks that the U.S. sent to Ukraine, which at the time, as you remember, they were going to change the war for the Ukrainians, that all 31 of them have been destroyed by Russian kamikaze drones. And we've seen Ukraine, as I understand it, cause the majority of Russian battle deaths and losses on the field due to drone warfare. What does that impact for other weapon systems? Does that mean it's the end of the tank? Does it mean it's the end of artillery warfare? How broad do these effects go?
Well, we're seeing war transform right before our eyes. And if you look at the third year of the Ukraine conflict, right now, 80% of the casualties on both sides are caused by drones. The Ukrainian military actually now launches more drones than they do artillery shells. So we're seeing a shift to just an extraordinary amount of lethality that are being caused by drones. And not only are drones becoming more widespread on both sides, but the third year of the Ukraine war is actually more deadly than the first and the second year combined.
You helped create the Defense Innovation Unit at the Pentagon, the DIU, and the mission, as I understand it, is to basically speed up America's adoption of new technologies in war and try to leverage some of the expertise and the technologies from the private sector more quickly. Is it your sense that the U.S. is making adjustments to this new style of warfare quickly enough? Because, as you know better than me, Pentagon has a long history of staying wedded to big, older, legacy weapon systems that they kind of have trouble giving up.
Yeah, militaries are conservative for a bunch of good reasons. Trying out new things in war can be incredibly risky, but also you don't want to bring to, a new war weapons platforms that were built for an earlier war. So what we're seeing right now is part of a historic shift that actually begins at the end of the Cold War. It used to be that the US government had an absolute monopoly on advanced technology. DARPA, other defense labs were inventing things like global positioning systems and stealth technology. But today, the defense labs are actually quite small in comparison to the commercial technology market. I mean, if you look at companies like Apple or Microsoft or Amazon, they are larger, each of them, than the entire defense industry combined.
Wow.
And to that tells someone like me that the locus of innovation has shifted. And if the US military wants to remain competitive in buying innovative technology, it's going to have to move beyond the traditional defense primes that have supplied so many of our large weapon systems.
Specific to the Ukraine war, of course, a lot of attention paid to what will Ukraine do if the U.S. stops supporting it in terms of weapon systems. Has Ukraine developed enough of a domestic weapons production industry, specifically, in particular, I should say, with drones, and not just air drones, but sea drones, et cetera, to compensate for that? In other words, can Ukraine do it alone, right, if the U.S. were to walk away because of this technology?
Well, the Ukrainians have proved themselves to be incredibly adept innovators. Today in Ukraine, there are now about 300 companies that are making systems, whether offensive or defensive, to aid the military effort. We have to remember the Ukrainian population has a very high number of highly educated engineers and computer programmers. And so they are adept at actually creating technology. And in fact, a lot of Western technology that is brought over to the battlefield has not proven to be successful because it's designed for an environment that the Russian electronic warfare systems, are very effective at jamming. So in many cases, actually, the Ukrainian technology is better. But it is also true that the U.S. provides really essential technology for drone defense, radars, Patriot missiles, and rockets that are used in combination with a lot of Ukrainian systems to defend against the very kind of a drone attacks that we saw overnight in Ukraine.
Yeah. Listen, they're deadly. Charles Kirchhoff, fascinating. It won't be the last time we talk about this. Again, the title of your book, Unit X, How the Pentagon and Silicon Valley Are Transforming the Future of War. And it's happening very quickly.